Welcome to Psyber-Conversations, the show where it's okay to agree to disagree. My name's Josh. Today I'm joined by Bob, Heather, and Matt. Again, we are talking this week about Avengers Age of Ultron, which came out in 2015. One thing I noticed about this film always reminds me is when they feature Got No Strings from Pinocchio, because this was the first movie to be released. Disney had already acquired Marvel all the way back in 2009, I believe. But this was the first movie after Disney acquired everything, including distribution, marketing. All of that had been handled by Paramount prior to this. But this is the movie where Disney did everything. And they threw that in to kind of say, this is fully a Disney movie by putting in a classic Disney song. So I always notice that every time I watch this movie. It's the first thing I think of.
I had not thought about that.
I just thought it was a good allegory for Ultron.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely is.
I enjoyed the metaphor.
I think Disney or not, someone would have still made that phone call and be like, "Hey, can we use that theme, that song from Pinocchio? Because it's like really good."
Oh, possibly, yes. And it definitely is a great allegory. But if you remember, even the trailer featured that song.
That's true.
The very first teaser had the full verse of that. And
right.
Really well done.
And it was chilling.
Yeah.
So Avengers Age of Ultron. So we already had an Avengers movie that was epic. Team up. It went really well.
Yeah.
And it was like, what do they do with part two? And how do you I think we've talked a lot about this phase two being everybody's, dealing with trauma, dealing with their PTSD, like with Tony. It's kind of
these are the darker movies.
Yeah, these are the darker movies, and kind of the where you see some of the vulnerabilities of each of the people, and you kind of explore sort of psyches. And I feel like I hadn't really thought about it until I watched it again. I'm like, this is kind of a good way to add it up. I don't know how you guys felt overall about the movie, how it was different. It was still an Extinction level event movie because he's going to drop the city like a meteor and blah, blah, blah. But, I felt like it was kind of a good, sum up of kind of where everybody was and kind of a culmination type of thing. Because you had S.H.I.E.L.D. fractured, you had everybody kind of, still trying to put things together, but, everybody kind of got together. I don't know what everybody's kind of overall thought process of it on, being the second Avengers movie. And not really necessarily compared to the first one per se. I mean, I'm kind of comparing it, but it was kind of like, what were they going to do with the sequel? And I thought this one was, was pretty well done. I think that hindsight's 2020 and looking back on it, like I said, I think it really did a good job of like summing up or fitting in with all these different, like everybody's exploring their vulnerability psyche movies.
I remember, and I still feel the same way, like watching this movie, I get the same feeling watching it now that I did back in the theater, which was slightly underwhelmed. I was a little disappointed with it. It wasn't as good as I had hoped it would be, though I still enjoyed it thoroughly. And it's not that I didn't like it, but there were certain things that bothered me. And I remember thinking that right when the movie started, the first time I watched it too, there were things going through my head that I was like, what? Why are they doing that? And I still get that.
Yeah, I didn't like this movie that much when it came out initially. I like it more now. I think it's aged well. I said that a lot about some of the other weaker MCU films. I still think this is a pretty good movie overall. Definitely weaker than Avengers 1. I know we said we weren't going to compare it. I don't know.
No, I said I wasn't.
I don't think that I don't think it's realistic to say that we can talk about this without comparing it.
Well,
sure, yeah.
And I think the thing with that is it's the same writer and director as the first one. And I don't necessarily agree that Joss Whedon should have continued as the writer-director for this movie. I don't know that he was the wrong choice, but I don't know if he was the right choice. Where the MCU was at this point, it felt like it had shifted away from his, I don't want to say campy, but kind of his plucky humor that he had introduced in the first Avengers. We had shifted beyond that. We already talked about phase 2 kind of being that PTSD era for these characters. And you could feel that Joss Whedon may have felt uncomfortable writing some of these scenes. The humor felt tangibly absent in this one. It was still there,
Yeah.
but with some of the one-liners, but it was not as quippy as the first Avengers. And I think, I don't know if that's because Joss Whedon didn't fit this. I'm not saying he's a bad writer. And we already discussed last time with the Avengers movie episode some of his shortcomings as a person, but as a writer, I don't know that he was the best fit for this one. Some of the subject matter that they went over in this movie may have been out of his scope.
I agree. And I think that's also why I don't particularly like the theatrical release of Justice League, where he also came in to add his jokes and they didn't land because either his jokes kind of weren't any good anymore, maybe he was past his prime, or it was just not the type of movie that he's strong at because he doesn't do dark movies as much as lighthearted, even though he adds a lot of darkness to his movies. Look at Serenity.
Right. But I think the Justice League, that was just a perfect storm for him. I don't think that falls on his shoulders squarely anyway.
Yeah.
No,
I
not
think
squarely. But
what if Christopher Nolan had done Age of Ultron?
No.
that was too dark.
See, I don't have the same kind of like criticisms of writers, directors, and stuff that you guys do. I'm not quite as versed in Hollywood in that
It's
way.
kind of like asking, what if the Avengers was done by what's his name?
Tim Burton?
Tarantino.
Oh,
No, Quentin
that was-
Tarantino.
No, but I will say that just the subject matter in this, I think if it had been more quippy, I would have really disliked it. Like it was meant to be a more serious, heavier movie, and I think I enjoy that about it. Actually, I don't like kind of when it's just throwaway comedy, throwaway comic lines and stuff. I think I enjoyed that it was deeper and it made you think more.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree as well. I think this movie had a lot of depth, and I think, again, it's not that it's a bad movie. I just don't know if Joss Whedon was the right call. And I know why they brought him in. It's because the first one was so successful. But it was just, I don't know. And maybe at this point, when the MCU was where it was at, this is where I personally had felt the superhero fatigue kind of starting to settle in for me personally. And I can recall not going to the theater for every MCU movie after this one. And I don't know if it's because of this one and how it made me feel, but just the superhero fatigue just had started to enter in my brain a little bit. At this point, I do think this is the third best Avengers movie, and I do think this is a top 10 MCU film. I know we save our rankings for the end, but I want to start this one because I feel like this movie can be a bit controversial. I place this one at 9th overall in my hierarchy of the MCU.
Let me jump on what Matthew said, which is, why do you think it's controversial?
I think,
just curious.
Well, controversial in the quality. I think if you go on social media now, I mean, every time an Instagram reel pops up on my feed for Age of Ultron, whether it's a scene from the movie or like an edit put together, everybody's like, "Oh, Age of Ultron, my beloved," and I think it's more revered now by the younger audience that may have not had the social media presence back when it released. So that's where it's kind of like the prequels for Star Wars, right?
Do you think advances in technology and just generational perspective is part of that? Like, I don't know, like, advent of AI, related kind of stuff, like the further forward we get.
That's an interesting question. I don't think I thought about that. I think people just get nostalgic for this movie. It's 11 years old now at this point. So
I know just current event stuff and talking about AI and talking about giving AI certain powers is a particularly like wild idea. Like watching this right now in this time had a very particular perspective for me, like rewatching it now. But that's current events related stuff, 2026. So
I did talk to my daughter, for what it's worth, about her favorite movies, and this was her favorite movie of the entire MCU for a while until Endgame supplanted it. Or at least that's what she said on a phone call last night. So, for what it's worth. And as far as what you said, Heather, I agree with you. I mean, I've said this before. I didn't like the fact that in phase 3, the movies got a little too much humor, and I wanted them to take the subject matter more seriously. At the same time, this movie felt a little bit, maybe just a tiny bit too little humor, because one thing that I did notice was that I enjoyed the humor in this movie more and wish there was more of it, especially Ultron. I enjoy Ultron's personality as, because he's got Tony Stark's personality and he's quippy like Tony Stark. So when he starts acting like a casual robot, that made me happy. I enjoyed that. I wanted to see more of it. Like the stuff he said to Claw and just the way he talks that way. That was part one of my favorite scenes in the whole thing was when Ultron was acting like that. I guess because I like the idea of this irreverent AI. Not enough that it's an AI, a living AI, but the fact that it's completely
It has an
irreverent.
attitude.
Yeah. It has Tony Stark's attitude of all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's get into Ultron specifically because it's the age of Ultron, right? And I one of the notes I had on there was that Ultron isn't just a robot; he's Tony's anxiety with Wi-Fi. And I thought another question I had was, is Ultron an evolution? We've talked about Tony's PTSD because of Iron Man 3 and everything he was going through and going into space, and he's having the dreams and his suits are coming alive and almost killing Pepper and all that stuff. Is Ultron an evolution of Tony's PTSD, maybe from Iron Man 3? Ultron had, his mission. The other thing I find interesting about Ultron is when we think about the MCU where we are now, again, it's 11 years later, it's like we've had other characters pop back up or been touched on or whatever, but Ultron has never shown up again.
That's not
as of yet
entirely true. He's in What If, but it's a different version of Ultron.
Oh yeah, I forgot What If is part of canon.
Yeah, it's technically canon, but I don't know that I would say he's Tony's anxiety with Wi-Fi. I don't even get the sense outside of some of the one-liners that he is Tony's personality. I know they say it in the movie. But Ultron feels like his own person. He feels like his own character. He doesn't feel like a rendition of Tony or even Bruce, because they talk about that. They're like, we put all this stuff in him and
yeah, I agree. I think he's his own character. I think he has the same kind of wit that Tony does. And if we want to make that connection, because Tony was involved in the formation of him, maybe a connection there, but I didn't see him so much as a personification of Tony's anxiety, as more of a just yet another coping mechanism that Tony's trying to create and pull out of something, just to try and stop the fear that keeps hounding him.
Yeah, I think about how Andy Serkis's character is like, you're one of Stark's. And he goes, what? You think I'm one of Stark's puppets? Blah, 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 blah. Then he rips his arm off and he's like, oh, I'm sorry about that. But
that looks like it hurts.
I think that, yes, he has his own personality, but at the same time, I think he knows he's still tied to Tony and he's trying to break out and create his own personality. Mm-hmm. So anytime someone challenges him as to his identity, he pitches a hissy fit and he needs a Xanax.
One
thing that...
Go ahead, Josh.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know if that's a fair assessment of Ultron, because Jarvis isn't Tony's personality and he's one of Tony's creations. And same with Friday. I mean, they don't have that quippy. I just don't see Tony in Ultron, aside from the one-liners and maybe the sassiness. That's the only connection I can make between the two.
I think like a relative. He's a relative of Tony.
Yeah,
somehow.
Sure.
He's in the family with Tony.
The one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is that this is completely an MCU character, because Ultron in the comics was created by Hank Pym, and it makes sense they wouldn't have made Hank Pym the creator of Ultron in this, because he hasn't been introduced yet. Ant-Man comes next. But casual theater goers who aren't familiar with the comics didn't know who Hank Pym was yet. But I know that in the comics, Ultron is far more menacing and colder and less quippy. So again, when I watched it, I really enjoyed the whole quippiness of it, because I like the fact that he's a creation of Tony Stark and he's got Tony's qualities. I don't know exactly where he got them, but I didn't really think about it that much. I just enjoyed what we got.
Well, given that information, because I don't know the comics, maybe that's that Joss Whedon influence there of trying to make him a little more humorous.
Or the Disney influence.
Maybe.
Disney, yeah.
Yeah.
I do think Ultron is one of the best written characters in the MCU. He's very memorable. He's not one-dimensional. I know we've talked about that in previous episodes, having the one-dimensional villain. Ultron is far from that. And
much better villain.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a shame that they take him out so quickly in this movie. He could have been Thanos-level threat if they had handled it properly. But I know why they didn't, because Thanos was already in motion, and you can't.
Yeah.
You know.
And for all we know, because he is an AI, and because it was established in this movie that he can send his consciousness into the internet, as though the internet is some kind of tangible thing. They could bring him back. I mean, they said in the movie they trapped him and they wouldn't let him leave, and that's why they had to defeat all of those robots. But still, it's very easy for them to say, oh, well, a little bit of the code managed to get away, and they could bring him back in a later movie if they wanted to.
Yeah, if they could bring back the German scientist guy from Hydra as a blob in a green screen,
That's true. Yeah, we might get a version of Ultron.
No one dies in the MCU.
Well, not anymore. Now that there's a multiverse. I did want to bring up too is that we did get 2 new characters introduced, which was Quicksilver and Wanda.
Mm-hmm.
In this.
And one thing that's really weird to me, I still even last night when I rewatched this movie, Quicksilver. This is, I believe, 2 years after that same actor, Aaron Taylor Johnson, was in Kick-Ass.
5 years.
5 years. But still, he's so different. I can't see his face in it. I can't recognize him. And of course, he looks completely different. He sounds completely different. He definitely impresses me as an actor because he plays so different roles. I've said before, my favorite actors are the ones who completely, you don't see the actor, you see the character. And Aaron Taylor Johnson does that. That's why my favorite actor of all time is probably John Lithgow, because he plays so many different characters that are nothing alike. Compare that to someone like Jack Nicholson. I love Jack Nicholson. I'm not dissing him, but Jack Nicholson plays every role like Jack Nicholson. You know exactly what you're getting if you hire him. He's going to play every role the same, except it's Jack Nicholson as the Joker. But John Lithgow goes, completely different. And Aaron Taylor Johnson, in this case, I don't see any bit of kick-ass character in Quicksilver, even though they're both superheroes.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit reminiscent. So I got to give props to him for that. And of course, I love Scarlet Witch. I mean, she's probably, if she isn't the most powerful MCU, or if she isn't the most powerful Marvel character, she's one of.
Right. Which is well established in the comic books.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And she's also my daughter's favorite character. My daughter absolutely loves Scarlet Witch, even though she's not called Scarlet Witch in this.
Not yet. I always joke whenever she comes on screen, I'm like, with my wife, I'm like, hey, that's you, because she kind of looks like her, but not entirely. But she looks a little similar. There's some faces.
She does look so young in this movie.
Yeah, me and my wife were watching it just a little bit ago, and I was like, wow, she's pretty youthful looking compared to even Infinity War.
Just a couple years later, but she looks like a completely different person.
How old were the characters supposed to be? Does anybody have a sense of that?
Early 20s, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, they say that they,
because I know they refer to them a little more like kids, and they need.
They said
the
twins.
And they said that they were trapped under rubble in front of one of Tony's missiles, but I don't know if they said when that happened, just that it happened when they were
Google,
young.
Right.
Google says they're approximately 26 years old in Age of Ultron.
Oh, they seem younger than that. But anyway, that's just curiosity.
But this was-
that's Disney for you.
Well, this is one thing that was really interesting to me, though, was that they did bring in Quicksilver and Wanda Maximoff because, and it was interesting how they got around this, too, because at the time, Disney was not allowed to use Fox characters because Fox had not been bought by Disney yet. And Fox owned the rights to X-Men. And Quicksilver and Wanda's father is Magneto. So,
Right.
in the
mutants.
comics.
Right. They're mutants.
They weren't
Right.
allowed to say mutants.
No, they were
called them
enhanced.
miracles. They were enhanced, or at the end of the other movie, Winter Soldier, they said miracles. It's the age of miracles. Like that was the M word they were going to use instead of mutant.
Right.
So
yeah, but I thought that was interesting. That was interesting too. And they kind of pawn them off as like science experiments more than anything else. They don't really give you an explanation as to where they got their powers from and stuff like that. It's just Captain America going, we got enhanced on the field.
We got enhanced.
Yeah.
I do wonder if they're going to do something like that now that they do own the X-Men. They own Fox, and they're bringing X-Men in to the new movie, Avengers
Doomsday. Yeah.
So I wonder if there'll be any allusions to that. I don't know if they will, because as far as we know, Wanda could still be gone, and Quicksilver apparently is killed. So,
which was a huge mistake. I was one of the. I hate that they killed him. I was like, that's so stupid. I can't believe.
Yeah, he should have lasted more than one movie.
I know they were trying to add emotional depth to the movie. I thought that was stupid.
I found it was confusing because I couldn't really figure out why they would bring in a major character like that and kill him off.
Right.
I didn't have a problem. Like, it didn't anger me. I didn't think it was stupid so much as I just, to me, I didn't understand why they would do that. Let's take a huge character, a character of major import in the comics, and we'll kill him in one movie.
It was like wait, did that just happen kind of moment for me? Again, not the comic reader, but he seemed a very central character in the movie.
I think the logical side of my brain says because Quicksilver is more associated with the X-Men than Wanda is, so maybe they wanted to get rid of him because at the time they did not.
They couldn't expand on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that's what it was.
The things, one of the notes I had here was Wanda's visions. Because, we're talking about this movie did a lot of setting up for phase 3 as well as even beyond that. So, Wanda, there was the scene where, Ultron's like, whatever, go to work or do your magic or whatever. And so, everybody gets a vision. Captain America, Thor gets his thing. Black Widow gets her red room. Tony sees the whole dead Avengers thing. There was a lot of that. That one was going on. And questions off of that is like, out of those, whose vision when they had their visions, based on her, and Matthew had said we don't know what Hulk saw. She just made him mad. And we had the cool Hulkbuster suit scene, which everybody was like, ooh, when that, before it came out, like, oh, we're going to get the Hulkbuster suit and all that stuff.
I do wonder if there was any significance to the name Veronica.
I don't know.
I was trying to figure that out, why they would nickname Hulkbuster armor Veronica.
Maybe it had something to do with an artist or something.
Maybe. I thought it might have to do with Veronica from like Betty and Veronica from the Archie comics, but I don't know if there's anything to do with that.
You were
something
correct. It was the Archie comics characters Betty and Veronica, because Bruce Banner's love interest is Betty Ross.
Right.
So they chose Veronica as the anti, because for that.
I like the mind control scenes. I kind of said it at the top of the podcast. This movie does a lot. It has a lot of depth. And like we just said, this sets up a lot. It's a lot of visual storytelling and foreshadowing, not only in its own movie, but for the future movies that come out. I think Thor's obviously had the biggest long-term impacts, even though we don't fully see his side mission. I mean, we see a couple of scenes, but the flashes of the Infinity Stones, and you don't even see all of them. You only see the 4. I think that had huge implications going forward. I do wish we had seen the Hulk's vision, because we still don't know what Bruce Banner's gamma radiation scene looks like, other than the opening credits of the Incredible Hulk movie, and that kind of bugs me. Did get a good fight out of it, though, with the Hulk versus Hulkbuster. I love that scene.
Yeah.
And it's just pure chaos, and it's the only time we really see a true rage monster out of the Hulk outside of his own movie in the MCU, if you think about it, which is disappointing. We'll blame Disney for that one. But I like the Vision scene, and I think it shows off Wanda's powers, even if she doesn't fully understand them yet.
Yeah.
I kind of like them. I feel like that. I don't know. I kind of lose the point of Steve's and Natasha's, because they're basically telling us stuff that we either already know or don't need. Like, and I'm not complaining. I don't know if I completely am on board with Steve being at this dance with Peggy, but we know that he misses her. We know that he wishes that he was still with her. And the same thing with the Red Room.
But at the end of Endgame, maybe this vision makes him finally, that's what causes him to decide to stay behind after he's dropped off all the Infinity Stones. So
I'm not saying they don't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, they make complete sense. I just don't know how necessary they were, because they weren't telling us anything new. Except for Thor's, I thought.
I don't know that I agree with that. I like the Black Widow scene. We haven't seen anything on her background. We just heard about it. Steve's, that's unnecessary. But I like the Black Widow. Just the couple of flashes we see of her in the Red Room.
Yeah, I think she talks about, I have read in my ledger, blah, 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 blah. And that has come up, not necessarily that statement, but I think with Black Widow, that's come up several times, where she, ultimately, her driving force is to make amends with what she'd done in the past. I mean, clearly, all the way up until she, is thrown off the tower to get the Soul Stone in Endgame. But I think that scene just, again, it shows her guilt, that she's still kind of feeling guilt. She still has some trauma from that she obviously hides very well. But I think that they all have a validity, and we don't get to see it, but we know about it, but getting to see it and kind of the reaction to it, I think, is more the point.
And I think the point of the visions that each person got was just kind of revealing, like, one of the most vulnerable parts of that character. So for Steve Rogers, it was his, still
what he missed out on
for his past and why he missed out on. Right.
Yeah.
But like, that exposure of the vulnerabilities, I think is what ties them all together. It didn't, wasn't about adding something necessarily, but it was exposing vulnerabilities.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not really complaining. I just wasn't completely sure I understood why they would, especially Steve's, because it didn't give us any information. But it did set up something with Natasha that, and I don't have feelings one way or the other. Well, not much, because it doesn't have anything to do with me. But I know my daughter and a few other people I've spoken to were upset with something that Natasha said in this movie. And I don't know how big a controversy it was, but her referring to herself as a monster because she can't have kids because they sterilized her.
I don't know if that was referring to her childbearing abilities. I thought it was just her as an assassin. Well, I thought it was as an assassin. She says,
that's what I got out of that.
Well, like she said specifically, she said they sterilize you so that you have one less thing to think about when you're an assassin. And if she had said, like, so you're not the only monster, and she had left it at that, I might assume she was talking about the people at the Red Room being monsters. But she said, do you still think you're the only monster on the team? Saying she's the monster. And I know, I mean, again, I don't know if like which side I fall on, but I know of a number of women that I've talked to who took it to mean she was talking about her ability to have kids and it making her a monster, that she was sterile, which I never that would be a horrible thing to think. I wouldn't think a woman is a monster if she's sterile, but I don't know if I agree that that's what they were saying, or if it was just a misunderstanding.
May have been a misunderstanding. It may tie into how Joss Whedon, again, is as a person. And
Yeah.
it's bleeding into some of his writing. I don't know. I took it as she's an assassin. She didn't have to worry about, any legacy that she was leaving behind with any potential children. And she could just be a killing machine.
Yeah, I guess the fact that, it was like that graduation, culmination that I guess in a way, I mean, she didn't choose to go through, like I don't know how much of it was forced, or that, here she is and this is the next step in her journey. And, that was just par for the course for her. And that can make her feel like a monster that, she went through with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I mean, the internet's saying, yeah, I guess it is talking about her forced sterilization, where she views her inability to have children, a byproduct of her training to become a killing machine, as a loss of humanity that makes her a monster. So I don't know. Maybe it's
beyond the scope of this show, definitely.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not going to be a therapist about it, but I could see how it could be derogatory or offensive to some people in that regard.
I mean, my gut take on it, and this is the female point of view here, is I thought it was talking about the monsters that did that to her, since it was described as a forced sterilization.
But she said monster on the team, and they're not.
She feels bad that she is in that spot. Of course, yeah. I guess her comment, sure, but yeah, I think it was more of a she just looked at herself in such a derogatory way because this had happened to her.
Yeah.
Victim blaming.
I still take it as she's a dehumanized killing machine. And that was what I took away from it. But
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, not to brush past the Black Widow potential controversy, but that scene where she's explaining it to Bruce to relate to him on a human level. This whole movie, they've been shoehorning this romance into their relationship.
No idea why they did that.
I didn't like it. It felt so forced that Black Widow was suddenly in love with the Hulk. I get that she's his calming down mechanism, the lullaby thing. It felt wrong, and there's no chemistry on screen between Ruffalo and Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
And that's weird to say because Mark Ruffalo's in a lot of rom-coms from the mid-2000s.
But it's not a diss on him. It's not to say that he's not a good actor. He just doesn't have chemistry with...
See, I didn't have this issue with him. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be like the romance of a lifetime kind of thing, but they were flirting and they were getting, there was something about it, like in that moment that, I don't know. I didn't, it wasn't something I expected to necessarily persist through future movies or something, but I don't know. I just didn't care. I mean, it's like, oh, that's cute, and move on, like whatever.
I found it cringy. I have to agree with Matt. I found the whole thing cringy. I didn't see why they did it. They had zero chemistry, and that's not to say either one of them is a bad actor. They just don't have sparks between them,
which is odd because he's been across from other similar actresses with similar acting profiles like Jennifer Garner in 13 Going on 30 and even Gwyneth Paltrow in View from the Top. And it just, for whatever reason, it didn't click. It didn't click in this movie.
Well, yeah, because
I thought it was supposed to be awkward. So, I mean, again, it's not just how I took it. Yeah.
But it's not a matter of being awkward. Some people just have no chemistry together. Yeah. And that's not to do with like the type of person they are. It's just some people have sparks. Watching Andrew Garfield acting opposite Emma Stone, and you could feel the electricity. And it wasn't because they were dating off screen. I don't know if they came into the movie already dating or if they started dating when they were in that movie, but you could feel chemistry there. There was nothing of that here. It felt like two actors saying lines from a script. And there's no precedence for it in the comics, so I really don't know why they added it, other than Disney saying, we have to have a romance. We need to have a romance in this movie. We cannot have a superhero movie without some kind of romance put in there. And that bothers me anyway, because I want to see more movies without romance. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank Bob, Matthew, and Heather for joining me as we discussed the Avengers Age of Ultron. Next week, we will continue our discussion. And if you haven't already, please hit like and subscribe. And as always, make tomorrow better than yesterday.